Listen, who is this guy who's always smashing it at work? My friend who sits on his floor said he's coding three products at the same time. Three. And they all ship next month.
Oh yeah, he's also doing the quarterly reports. So fit, yeah. Did you see his post from the gym? And he always seems to be on vacation with his family. Yeah, he's also in my yoga class on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. I've never seen him skip a class.
What? I'm sure he only sleeps 3 hours and thinks sleep is for the weak.
Let me let you in on one of the worst kept secrets in corporate history. Successful people are not superhuman employees who can just do more work. They're just smarter about how they work. So let me ask you, do you ever feel like you're working harder than anybody, have a never-ending to-do list, you're compromising on your personal time to finish work, and yet it's never enough to get you the outcomes or the recognition that you deserve? At the same time, does your workplace have that one person who's always smashing it at work? Whatever they do becomes the next victory of the department. They're the boss's favorite, and as if that wasn't enough, they've made it to the gym 4 times in the week and are always posting pictures from beautiful vacation destinations. Looking at their success, you wonder, how do they do it? In my early years as a working professional, I went through the same journey. I pushed myself to work harder and harder, thinking that it'll help me do better. I kept trying to finish every single thing on my to-do list, and whilst I kept pushing myself more, somehow never got done. I prided myself on being last to finish work and the first to start, and somehow I was never seeing the results I expected. All until I was complaining to a friend about my poor lifestyle, and they said, "What you were describing sounds humanly impossible." Have you ever thought about prioritizing the one or two things that really matter? Let me tell you about the 80-20 rule, the same rule that Steve Jobs used to turn around Apple and has helped Elon Musk do the unimaginable and unprecedented at places like Tesla and SpaceX. And after he told me about it, my life was never the same again. And I'm going to tell you about it today, and I'm pretty sure neither will yours. Hey guys, my name is Akshay Goenka, and the team on this channel has been learning the art of using the 80-20 rule to boost their productivity by working at some of the most prestigious companies in the world and hustling their way to start successful, fast-growth startups, all whilst finding the time for health, for happiness, and rich life experiences. Do leave us a comment on how you applied this rule to your work and how that worked out. And also what topic or problem can we cover next to help you. But first, do hit the subscribe button below so more people can learn about this and other secrets. So back to the 80-20 rule. This rule was also called the Pareto principle. It was originally theorized by an Italian economist, Vilfredo Pareto, and what it means in very simple terms is that 80% of the output is typically driven by 20% of the input. This is not meant to be exact. It's an approximation to indicate that majority of the outcome comes from a small subset of the inputs, even though we tend to do a lot of things. This goes well beyond economics, and once you start looking, it seems to be almost everywhere you look. Let's take an example of business. Majority of Apple's product revenues come from a few key products. In fact, almost half is just one product, the iPhone. It's also true in world economics. The G20 countries contribute to more than 80% of the world GDP, even though that's less than 10% of the number of the countries in the world. This is even more stark in an area like wealth creation. 80% of the world's wealth is actually held by the richest 1%. Finally, this is also true in your life in so many ways. For example, think back to your best moments, the memories that you think about from time to time, the things that you actually remember. And if you think about it, you'll realize that less than 20% of your lifetime or the times that you've spent on this earth actually contribute to almost all the memorable moments. The happy thoughts, the times when you learned something, the time that something new happened to you. It's never the daily drudgery at work that you remember. It's the time when you reach the top of the mountain, it's the time that you met your partner for the first time, it's the time when you went to that most beautiful holiday that you can never forget. The rest has faded away. Stepping back, when I realized this a few years ago, it was an absolutely insane mic drop moment discovery for me. Because once I started to see it, I started to apply it everywhere and realize it's almost one of nature's greatest truths. Why don't you pause for a second and share more examples in the comments of where you've seen this rule applied? Now, while I think that you might have got the general idea, ideas aren't always easy to apply and not useful till we make them specific and actionable. Now, whilst there are so many great applications of this concept of 80-20 in your life, I'll be covering a lot of them in future videos, but today I'd love to tell you about a very specific way in which you can apply this to your work starting right now. But first, we need an example. Let's take a fictional but representative daily calendar. Do note that I've added in not only your formal calendared meetings, but also the kind of tasks and to-dos that you typically plan for at some point in the day. And many people like me also put them down on their calendar to organize your day. It's not uncommon in our work, in professional lives, to have a day crammed with work and stretching to 12 hours and beyond if you include everything you plan to do. But what if I said that it could look something like this? Where you could free up 4 hours from your day to take proper breaks for meals, pursue your hobbies and passions without losing any output or impact from your work, and actually boosting your productivity. I know what you're thinking. How is this possible? Well, let's get into it. First and foremost, let's talk about the mindset. There's so many things on your calendar. It's a complete mess. But if you look beyond the activity, you'll start to realize that only some of it actually contributes to outcomes. Step back and ask yourself, what are the 1 or 2 things that are the most important for you tomorrow? What's going to drive the most impact? If you are unsure of what those are, there's a few ways I can help you figure that out. First, think about what's most important to your stakeholders, your manager, your company's leaders, maybe your customers or your clients. What topic do they keep bringing up, following up on, and is clearly top of mind to them? That's important. Second, think about the big impact piece that you're driving. Maybe it's a project or a product that you're working on that everyone is closely watching and counting on you to deliver. Finally, think about what's on critical path this week. What will explode if you don't give it your attention? Will you let down a teammate or another project team? For example, which project goes up for review with your leadership team this week and just has to be done? Excellent. I'm sure that with this, you've managed to figure out what are your top priorities. Now, for the purpose of this video today, let's say that they are 1. Product X and Y, which are the 2 main products you've been working on and you have calls to present to the rest of the leaders tomorrow. Second, maybe there's a regional call on Project Space Y, which is the big new cool thing that's happening in the company and you've been trying to get assigned to it for many months and have thought through what you're going to say tomorrow. Number 3, a presentation on strategy for your department that the CEO has announced is their top priority for this quarter and wants to review this week. Now, look back to your calendar. What do you see? I have 12 things to do tomorrow. But I'd say you have 12 activities planned tomorrow and over a 12-hour workday, but less than 1/3 of that is driving your identified big priorities. And by the way, you might notice that you haven't accounted for work on the 3rd priority you just identified, which is to prep the CEO presentation at all. The reason for this is that we tend to think in tasks, not in priorities or outcomes. Tasks take up time and they make us feel busy and that we're doing a lot of things, but they don't always drive value or impact or get us credit. Further, they create poor work-life balance by extending our workday. What we need to do is think in terms of outcomes and not in terms of activities. We need to ruthlessly prioritize things on our calendar every day to make sure that we're inordinately focusing on value-driving tasks. And let me tell you how to do this in 3 simple steps. First, clean up. Ask yourself, are there tasks that are here that don't need to be there anymore? Are there meetings that aren't needed or meetings that can simply be an email? Given tomorrow is a hectic day, maybe we can cancel your daily check-in and status update call with your team at 9 a.m. and drop them an email to send you an offline update instead. You do this every day. On a day where it's not so important, think about whether you need to get on an actual call. Many times there are meetings that you are invited for but don't have a reason to attend. For example, why don't you plan to not join this big group meeting on cafeteria hygiene and rules at 10 a.m.? You anyway don't know how it appeared on your calendar, there's a lot of people invited, and generally you would have gone along to see what's happening, but you need to prioritize your time. Next, ask yourself, can you shorten any other discussion that is important but simply doesn't need the amount of time that you had allocated when you set it up? Maybe the discussion with Joe can be 30 minutes instead of an hour, and just prioritize the agenda of that call to the most important things. We just opened up 3.5 hours of time. What? This might sound simplistic right now, but ask yourself, how many times could you have done this last month and you just didn't take the time to think about it and just went with the flow instead? It's important that you change that going forward. Step 2. Align and reprioritize. Let me ask you, how many times have you labored hard and sent in something to your manager or your team leader that you understood to be urgent and got like no response or a simple thanks? What you didn't realize is that your manager probably used the 80-20 principle to their own list. Maybe they attended some management meeting which told them the task is no longer important. The only one who didn't get the memo was you. The message here is that it's key that you regularly recalibrate what's important with your leaders, either via a regular check-in or an email or a quick conversation from time to time to highlight your priorities and what you'll be spending time on. For example, before you begin working on the briefing for your manager on the internal SOP and documentation needs, which you've planned for 5:30 tomorrow, think back to the time when they vaguely asked for this a couple of weeks ago, maybe a month ago. Have you checked in on whether it's still needed? Have you had a conversation about it, which is so important, on the timelines of when it's needed, on the urgency, and what specifically you need to do? If it's still important, in that conversation, you can understand the scope and align very well on the output, which will save you time in the future on revisions and work that you never needed to do. But given it's been a couple of weeks, it's quite possible that this is no longer a priority till like next month, or maybe it's not needed at all. And in both cases, you can deprioritize it for tomorrow and free up time in your day and pick it up later on a lighter day if it's needed at all. Sometimes the opposite can be true. For example, on reviewing, you might realize that the training which you've planned to do at 3 p.m. is not only mandatory, but it's also due tomorrow. So you have to do that one. Finally, the company retreat email broadcast is one item that you definitely want to do. It's a passion project for you, but given you have a hectic day tomorrow with a lot of important priorities, why not just reschedule it for Friday when you have more breathing room? It's important, but not a priority for tomorrow. And now we've just opened up another 2 hours on your calendar.
And the final step 3, I'm back.
Before you go, Akshay, why are you undoing all the good work and the free time that we just created? Remember, it's important to realize that great outcomes isn't about only saving time. It's about allocating time to the most value-creating tasks. Now, what I'm going to do with the freed up time is, of course, make some time for meals and hobbies and all of your passions, but also add back some work time to do tasks that were important but you couldn't make time for. For example, priority 3 that you mentioned earlier on the strategy presentation for the CEO that's due later next week can now be pulled back and worked on tomorrow. This way, you have some progress to show in case your seniors, who must be nervous given this is for the CEO, if they decide to come and suddenly check in on you. We need to stay ahead of the game. And also, add time for intangibles that contribute to these priorities or outcomes. For example, when were you planning to prepare for your 2 product presentations tomorrow that you identified as so important? Let's add a specific slot where you can be focused and prepare for them well so you can dazzle when the time for the presentation actually comes. And finally, let's solve your lifestyle and work-life balance. Take some time for breakfast, a quick gym session maybe in the morning, and close work well in time for your evening run or social or a drink with friends or a date night with your partner. There you go. Look at the transformation that we've made. Now we have a day that's not only 3 hours shorter, but also focused on driving high value priority items for you whilst keeping time for everything else that you care about. While this example was intentionally taken as a tangible, real, but fictional one for a one-day calendar, I'd like to stress that this is applicable to your work life more thematically at the level of a week or a month or even a quarter. The only way to do this is to take out just 10 minutes every night or every morning, maybe in the car or over a coffee, to prioritize your day or week just like we did together right now. That is an investment of time that will be totally worth it for you. Think about your priorities, keep realigning them with your stakeholders, but then focus on the tasks that drive those outcomes and ruthlessly prioritize everything else to make the time. Finally, of course, now that you're the new office superstar, don't forget to post that picture from the gym or your next vacation whilst your colleagues wonder, just like you did, how is this possible? Thanks for watching. Do subscribe to my channel and post a comment on what you thought about this video and how we can help you with more topics in the future. And now that you've mastered this 80-20 rule to boost your productivity, why not watch my video on how to prioritize and say no while still getting people to like you? And by the way, as you free up time, why not learn how to invest it in a second career like content creation or writing or music that'll help you be wealthier and happier in the long term. See you there, and thank you for watching.